There we go. And Rob, we'll go ahead and start off with the third step prayer, sir.
Sounds good. Page 63 of your big book, everybody. God, I offer myself to thee
myself to thee.
to build with me
Oh,
and do with
and
me
do with
as
me,
thou wilt.
I will.
Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Thank you, Rob. All right. So we are on page XXVII at the very bottom. We've been talking about the doctor's opinion, so we're in the midst of him telling his part of the story as it relates to AA, and we're just now talking about Bill W. So if you want, Rob, we'll just go ahead and start right there at the very bottom, and then just keep going.
You got it, my friend.
Mm.
Of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor, and this often requires a definite hospital procedure before psychological measures can be of maximum benefit. We believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. These allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they cannot break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them and become astonishingly difficult to solve.
So there's a lot packed into this last what Rob just read. So of course, an alcoholic ought to be freed from his physical craving for liquor. That's the whole goal of getting into a mode of recovery and sobriety. It may require that they go to a rehab facility or even a hospital, and then once they've sobered up, dried out, if you will, then they're more willing and ready to accept the psychological approach, which is also we call this the spiritual approach. They introduce here for the first time really is the first symptom of the, well, not the first time, but in detail here is the first symptom, which is the allergy. It is that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker, which is the frustrating part of all of us. We watch people drink and stop without any hesitation, whether they're finished with their drink or not. For us with this allergy, this that kicks in once we have that first drink. We can't stop until we've run out of alcohol, we've passed out, etc. And it's a very maddening and frustrating place to be. And this allergy actually kicks in after the first drink. So think in terms of that with regard to what we're talking about. This allergy that we're talking about doesn't actually occur until you've had that first drink, and then it kicks in and you're off to the races. Otherwise, we're talking about the insanity of the mind, and we'll talk about that later. This is kind of the meat and potatoes, if you will, of what we're going after here, and it's once this allergy has kicked in, it takes more than just your human. No human power can actually stop it. You need something bigger than yourself in order to assist you. Rob?
Yeah, the Growing and Understanding group yesterday, they had a presentation on Marty Mann by Miley. If you've never seen the presentation, Miley is incredible. She's doing another one on Florence R next Friday. But in it, she talked about Marty Mann having two alcoholics die in a cab and she was trying to take them to the hospital, and the hospitals would not accept these people. That's the 1940s. And, because they talk about here that alcoholics need a drying out period. You have to get the alcohol out of the alcohol. The problem is that it's difficult at times because they can go through delirium tremens, seizures, heart attack. There's so many things. You know, in the 1930s, Bill W. and Dr. Bob would bring people into their homes and would detox them. That meant giving them a shot every few hours in order so that they didn't go through the delirium tremens, etc. What these people went through. Today, we do have detox centers, and hospitals are not going to turn people away. As I say, I was shocked, um, you know, naive in the fact that I'm thinking that, no hospital is ever going to turn a sick person away. Well, they turned alcoholics away because they thought it was a moral issue. That, you know what, yeah, we'll dry him out today, and then tomorrow he's going to be doing exactly the same thing. And let's be honest, with Dr. Silkworth at Towns Hospital, he would have the same people in and out all the time at his treatment center. They take the alcohol out of the person, and they would go out, and then they would be back in a short period of time, worse off than they were before. But it's just what these people, what Bill W. and what Dr. Bob and these other people would do for alcoholics. Bring them into their homes, give them a shot every few hours to make sure that they don't convulse. It's incredible. I never want to forget that, because what am I willing to do? Am I willing to go out of my way to help people? This is what this whole book is about, is we have our spiritual experience, and then, our whole outlook on life changes. Instead of me thinking about myself all the time, I'm thinking about other people. How can I help somebody today? What can I do to make a difference in somebody's life? How can I help another alcoholic to get through another day when they're struggling? These are things that, we have to constantly keep on top of mind. It's the whole idea about this is that, you know what? We give it away. We keep giving it away. Oh, well, I'll move on to the next paragraph because it talks about, and I've highlighted this many, many times because the highlighting starts to fade. Okay. A few years ago, that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy, that the phenomenal craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. This is huge news. What are we suffering from? Maybe allergy isn't the greatest terminology for it. Okay, because when I think of an allergy, I think of somebody eating fish or strawberries that they're allergic to that break out in hives or their tongue swells, you know. But this is, what they came up with. It's an allergy that anytime we take alcohol into our body craves more, and we can't stop ourselves from taking it. So we have to remember that. We got to hammer it home, because people that are just coming into the fellowship, they have an idea that they drink too much, but they don't know why. They think it's a moral failing. Well, I had a rough day at work. That's why I'm going to take a drink. And then they're off to the races and they don't know why. I know when I came into the fellowship, I had no idea what I was suffering from. I knew I drank too much, but I didn't know why. So let's keep moving on. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves, if they are to recreate their lives.
Absolutely. So this frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. We take a drink and we can't stop. Message can be must have depth and weight. We are Their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. And this is really important to kind of hit home, and that is that you really have to dig in. You have to find that really that deep inner strength, that higher power, and have that um, spiritual experience, and really turn yourself over to a higher power in order to be able to stop. Rob?
Yeah, now the frothy emotional appeal, I want to take us over to page 20, in the middle of the page, basically. And here's some of the things the frothy emotional appeals are like. Let me just let this person in. Okay. How many times people have said to us, I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he'd stop for her sake. Frothy emotional appeals, these things don't work. You know, my wife, do you really need another one? Don't you think you've had enough? You know, and these are things that, like they sound great, but you know what? Once the allergy kicks off, I can't help myself. So we need something. In nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves. And I always emphasize, anytime you see if, emphasize it. If they are to recreate their lives. If any feels that as psychiatrists directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand with us a while on a firing line, see the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even of their sleeping moments. And the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. We feel after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them.
Yes. So there's a lot. Um, Neurologists and psychologists alike, they work really hard with the alcoholic who is trying to recover. Um, we feel that many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement uh, growing up around them. And that is this 12-step going out as an alcoholic, one alcoholic to another. The idea behind it is to relate to the recovering alcoholic or the one attempting to recover, and taking it further than what psychiatrists, psychologists, and other medical professionals can take it um, with regard to their recovery. Rob?
Yeah. Dr. Silkworth gave so much of himself to help the alcoholic and drug addicts also. And it must have just broke his heart to think that somebody's got it. When the Bill first went into Towns Hospital, he thought Bill had it. He thought he had what it took to get sober, only to see him back in a few months. And it's got to be so tough, to see the same people over and over again. What am I doing wrong? What can I do for them? What am I not doing? The constant thought, of what should I be doing? You know, and the humility that Dr. Silkworth had in order to let Bill help out other people. To realize that, what, maybe Bill's got something that I don't have, and he can help these people out. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. They are restless, irritable, and discontented unless they can again experience a sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks. Drinks which they see others taking with impunity. After they have succumbed to the desire gained as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develop, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. This is repeated over and over, and unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope of his recovery.
Absolutely. They like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is elusive. While they admit it's injurious, they cannot, after a time, differentiate the true from the false. This is the insanity of drinking, and the idea behind that. They look at it as they're the only normal ones. We look at others that drink normally as being odd and a little bit crazy, I guess. Um, the kind of what I want to point out here is we don't really have a drinking problem. We have a consequence problem. And you know, it says here once they've succumbed to the desire and the phenomenon of craving develops, they pass through a well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful. Things happen, the wrong things happen, you know, whether it's something you say or do or not say or not do, it comes out as being very much the consequences that have built up. And normally, the person coming to AA for relief and help and recovery is that they are fed up with the consequences and finally want to do something about it that's realistic, unlike just trying to use self-will to stop drinking. Um, this over and over again, it is maddening to say the least. How many times does it have to happen? It's different for all of us, but it is definitely a problem for us. And unless we have that psychic change, that spiritual experience, and finding that higher power, we have little hope, very little hope. Rob?
Yeah, they talk about a psychic change. Now, there's different ideas about that. Moral psychology is the branch, and I put this in the chat, is the branch of philosophy that contemplates what is right and wrong. It explores the nature of morality and examines how people should live their lives in relation to others. Okay, then it goes into, it's got three branches, etc. Okay, Dr. Jung had the same idea. Okay, the whole thing is to change our thought. Instead of being selfish and self-centered, start thinking about other people. Now, how do you get this into change somebody? That's the dilemma right there. Okay, so Dr. Silkworth knew that change had to be made, but he didn't know how to go about it. Dr. Jung with Roland Hazard said the same thing, and told Roland to get involved with a religious organization and maybe that'll do the trick. Maybe. There's no guarantees on this, but the whole idea is to stop thinking about ourselves. So moral philosophy is thinking about other people instead of ourselves. You know, let's go to page 27 for 1 second, because here I think is a great example of what it's all about. And because this is Dr. Jung talking to Roland. Yes, replied the doctor, there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding force of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. Whole new idea, whole new thought pattern, okay? Instead of thinking the world revolves around me, I revolve around the world, and how can I be of service? And that's what that's what Dr. Silkworth was trying to get across, and that's what Dr. Jung was trying to get across to Roland Hazard. And the easiest way is because when we think about religion, we think about what can we do for our fellow man. That's basically the philosophy of most religions. And so if we can get into that thought pattern, takes away the obsession of the mind. But we'll get into that more later on. So, men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal.
And we're back up on
I'm back on the other hand, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Sorry, that's why I hesitated. I get so excited about this, you know.
This
On
is
the
good
other
stuff.
hand, as strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once the psychic change has occurred, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol, the only effort necessary being that required to follow a few simple rules.
Yeah, so that's it's a big change. It is something that some people have immediately. Others are what we'll call and we'll come to know as the educational type, and it's kind of step by step. But nonetheless, once they have this psychic change, this spiritual experience, a newfound power comes over them, and they're much more readily able to stop drinking and stay stopped. I can't say from my own experience that it was the desire for alcohol was still there, even though my inner strength was able to stay stopped. There were in the beginning there were those pangs of want, and those slowly subsided over time. So it has there's kind of a growing into this maturing into it, this getting not only having this psychic experience, but also uh, um, um, uh, living it. And the few simple rules are the 12 steps. And as we see here, the there's on page, the very next page, down towards the bottom, there's a paragraph. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving, which is the allergy. The phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people, sets them apart as a distinct entity. Um, so this is kind of what we're talking about. This particular type of person that has so many problems and is despaired of ever solving them, seemingly doomed, and all of a sudden able to stop drinking with this psychic change and spiritual experience, as we're going to talk a lot about going forward. And again, those few simple rules are really referring to the 12 steps that we will get into in a lot of detail here later. Rob?
Yeah, and I'm going to go back because I put something in the chat, moral psychology, from writing of the big book. And we know that Hank wanted less religion in the big book. And him and Jim Burwell, they were more, their leanings were more atheists than anything else. And they didn't want, Bill wanted God. Don't forget, Dr. Bob and Bill came from the Oxford Group, Christian-based fellowship, you know, and everything was God. Surrender your life to God. Okay. Now, this is from writing of the big book. Hank lobbied for purely psychology of ego reduction and a life of increased usefulness to others. We are actually irreligious. Sorry, we are actually irreligious, but we are trying to be helpful. We have learned to be quiet, to be more truthful, to be more honest, to try to be more unselfish, to make other fellows' troubles our troubles. And by following 4 steps, we most of us have religious experience. The fellowship, the unselfishness appeals to us. And that's from writing. That was a quote on page 376 of the writing of the big book. So it's the whole idea is to change our thought process and from being so thinking yourself. But I think I think you all understand that now. Men have cried out to me in sincere and despairing appeal. Doctor, I cannot go on like this. I have everything to live for. I must stop, but I cannot. You must help me. You want me to go on, Leo?
Yeah, let's go ahead. Yep.
Okay. Faced with this problem, if a doctor is honest with himself, he must sometimes feel his own inadequacy. Although he gives all that is in him, it is often not enough. One feels that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Though the aggregate of recoveries resulting from psychiatric effort is considerable, We physicians must admit we have made little impression upon the problem as a whole. Many types do not respond to the ordinary psychological approach.
Absolutely. So, this, I cannot go on like this. You must help me. Doctors will do everything in their power to do what they know and what they believe in to help the alcoholic. But it's interesting here, and this is one of those things that has endeared Dr. Silkworth to the group, and that is the admission that they can only do so much, and sometimes that's not enough. And in doing that, they admit that something more than human power is needed to produce the essential psychic change. Acknowledging that is paramount to our cause and movement. The problem can be solved if they take it that next step and move beyond just the ordinary and extraordinary psychological approach. Rob?
Yeah, I just put a little blurb in the chat again. And it's Lois talking to Dr. Silkworth. And I'm just going to read it. Lois came to see me and afterwards had a talk with the doctor. Downstairs, she began to ask him the question that wives of alcoholics must have posed time out of mind. Quote, how bad is this? Why can't he stop? What's become of the tremendous willpower he once had? Where, doctor, are we heading? And finally, what's to be done now? Where do we go from here? And that's from Bill, My First 40 Years, his autobiography. Can you imagine? Here's a poor wife, husband's in the treatment center, and she's going, doctor, well, what can you do for him? Put him in an outhouse, basically, asylum. That's where Bill was headed, and Dr. Silkworth got, information for Lois on putting Bill into an asylum because if he kept on going like that, that's where he was going to end up,
Mm-hmm.
and so, you know, I just think of poor Dr. Silkworth. You give your whole life to help people, and this is the only, help you've got. You know, it's sad. Oh well. I do not hold with those who believe that alcoholism is entirely a problem of mental control. I've had many men who had, for example, worked a period of months on some problem or business deal, which was to be settled on a certain date, favorable to them. They took a drink a day or so prior to, oh, I'm sorry, they took a drink a day or so prior to the date, and then the phenomenon of craving at once became paramount to all other interests, so that the important appointment was not met. These men were not drinking to escape. They were drinking to overcome a craving beyond their mental control.
Yeah, so we're really kind of acknowledging the fact that people drink for all sorts of reasons, and not just because, as Rob had said before, just because we're having a bad day, we use that as an excuse to drink. It certainly is one of the reasons, but then there's other times when people drink because they're celebrating something, and or in this case that they're talking about is just simply trying to, they just didn't have the willpower in order to be able to stop. Which so there's no human power able to do this, and they found themselves to be alcoholic and drinking against their will. And while this was something of something good was going on within their lives, this is partly contributed to something that was beyond their mental control. This is that insanity, that inability to not take that first drink. It's just part of the recovery that we have. It's one of the symptoms that is attributable to alcoholism. Of the two, one is the mental part, and that's what we're talking about right now. The second is that once they start drinking, they can't stop, which is the allergy that kicks in after that first drink. But nonetheless, we are talking right now about the mental part, and they just cannot overcome that craving for that first drink, and they take it And in this case, these are, contributing, high functioning type individuals that are doing quite well and are not down on their luck and drinking to escape. Rob?
Yeah, and remember, Towns Hospital was not cheap. They weren't taking in the people from the Bowery. They were taking in people that had money. Bill Wilson was, I'm going to say, a relative exception. But his family, were able. His brother, his brother-in-law, who was a doctor, Leonard Strong, was able to pay for it, and his mother. Now, I'm going to read another thing that's in the chat, and this is Dr. Silkworth talking, and it's from Bill W. My First 40 Years. Therefore, the biggest fact about alcoholism is its obsessional nature. It is one of the most subtle, yet most powerful compulsions known. Once its grip is firm, the chance for recovery is diminished. How to help the alcoholic to expel his obsession is the problem. But we doctors have had little success. Quote, I've seldom helped even one case in 100. And that's Dr. Silkworth talking from Bill's book. It's sad. Back to the reading. Okay, I just got to get where I am. Okay, here we are. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenal craving which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult and in much detail is outside the scope of this book. There are, of course, type 1, the psychopaths, who are emotionally unstable. We're all familiar with this type. They're always going on the wagon for keeps. They are over remorseful and make many resolutions, but never a decision. Type 2, there is a type of man who is unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. He plans various ways of drinking. He changes his brand or his environment. There is the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. That's type 3. Then, number 4, there is the manic depressive type who is perhaps the least understood by his friends and about whom a whole chapter could be written. And then 5, then there are types entirely normal in every respect, except in the effect alcohol has upon them. They are often able, intelligent, friendly people.
Yeah, so a couple of things here. The classification of alcoholics seems most difficult, but that are much detail is outside of the scope of this book. I agree with it for the most part, but there are some types here. There is the type of the man that's unwilling to admit that he cannot take a drink. You know, I was there at one point, and I had to come around. So what I guess I'm saying is that some of these types of alcoholics, some will come around and actually get to the point of admitting that they have a problem, that they need to stop, and that they're ready and willing to do whatever it takes to stop. But in the context of what they're trying to say here, these are the 5 types of different types of people that are outside the scope of this book, and are definitely ones that have a really difficult time stopping, and in some cases, because of other underlying conditions, are incapable of stopping. And back to the very beginning of what Rob read, and that is making this a supreme sacrifice rather than to continue the fight, is that they die. They kill themselves drinking, and it's a real problem. And we have that happening every day with people that have been lost to alcoholism, and die from it. So the other kind of thing here is that the type 3 is come to known as the type who always believes that after being entirely free from alcohol for a period of time, he can take a drink without danger. That is known as the big lie. And it is definitely something that some people, including myself, felt like after a couple of weeks, after a couple of months, after whatever, I was like, I haven't taken a drink, so I should be able to drink normally. The fact is, The problem continues to get worse and worse the older we get, the longer we go, and we find ourselves faster and faster back in that hole that Bill S., our friend, talks about sometimes, and finding ourselves down in there and not sure how to get out. So um, the so there's a lot here, but these some of these types just don't make it for obvious reasons. They have underlying conditions that are beyond the scope of what we're talking about. But then some of these actually do finally come to terms with what they're doing and are able to come to us and find relief. Rob?
Yeah, the man of 32, who thought that his long-term sobriety would enable him to drink again. We'll read about that later on.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, is a great example of the big lie, where he thinks that, I haven't had a drink in 25 years. I've made my $1 million, and now I can sit back and relax and just enjoy life. He's dead within 4 years. Okay, there's also one story in the original manuscript there were six types that Bill had, and the sixth type was a neurotic. That is coming from the book that started it all, the all study version. It was removed by Bill and not put into the big book. A neurotic, emotionally and mentally disturbed. Neurotic is no longer used in scientific terms. So just thought I'd throw that in for a little bit of historic value. And so let's keep going. All these and many others have one symptom in common. They cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. This phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy which differentiates these people and sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment by which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence.
Yeah, we don't have a problem of moderation here, and that is part of what we're trying to say here. This symptom, this developing the phenomenon of craving, once we've taken that first drink, the allergy, as we're talking about, is something that differentiates us from others, and it is distinct, it is powerful, and it is the one of the two main symptoms that we talk about in order to try and get beyond and above with our higher power. But the only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence, and that is trying to stop drinking, never drinking again, and being able to withstand the urge to take that first drink. So combination there. Um, it's quite enlightening. It becomes even better. I can tell you, the longer I go without a drink, the better I get, both emotionally and physically. But the emotional part seems to be growing even more so because there's this kind of celebration of being able to just live your life free of alcohol and not have those desires and that craving, being able to tap into that higher power as necessary to be able to do that. And this is certainly addressing that and that ability to have entire abstinence from drinking. I know for a fact, no matter how much I try to convince myself otherwise, that there is no way that I can drink safely ever again. I might get away with a week, maybe 2 weeks of moderate drinking, but each day that craving will just continue to get bigger and bigger. The drinks will get bigger and bigger. The amount of the number of drinks gets higher and higher. And the next thing you know, I'm off to the races and it's a done deal. And I speak from experience in that regard, and learned a great deal from having tried to do exactly that. So, uh, Rob?
Yeah, if you really want to drive people crazy in a meeting, here's how you do it. A lot of people will talk about how many symptoms are there in alcoholism, two or three. Dr. Silkworth here says all these and many others have one symptom in common. They don't just drive people crazy. It's a small joke, because I've been in meetings where people have argued over is it a twofold illness or a threefold illness. Okay. And you know what? You can argue all you want. Remember, in AA, we're not supposed to argue. Okay. It doesn't do any good to anybody. Whatever keeps you sober is what it's all about. Okay. You know what? Are you keeping sober today? Yes. Great. Whatever you're doing is working for you. Perfect. Okay. But the whole idea is the allergy. Okay. Dr. Silkworth has hammered this in allergy. Okay. It has never been eradicated. What is the solution? Abstinence. We can never take alcohol, whatever, into our bodies. End of story. Now, will science one day come up with something? Maybe. Maybe. We don't know. But so far, they haven't. So, if anybody asks you, can I ever safely take a drink? No. If you are a real alcoholic, as they say in the book, you can never take alcohol in your body. Why? Because the phenomenal craving develops and you cannot control the amount you have. End of story. So please burn that into your consciousness because that's the first symptom. Okay. This immediately precipitates us into a seething cauldron of debate. Much has been written pro and con, but among physicians, the general opinion seems to be that most chronic alcoholics are doomed.
Yeah, basically what they're trying to say here is you're going to die of an alcoholic death if you don't get this. And that's pretty much the black and white of it. The debate is there with regard to the approach and the solutions. And again, it's just bottom line is that you're going to die of an alcoholic death if you don't get this. Rob?
Yeah. Top of page XXXI. What is the solution? Perhaps I can best answer this by relating one of my experiences. About 1 year prior to this experience, a man was brought in to be treated for chronic alcoholism. He had but partially recovered from a gastric hemorrhage and seemed to be a case of pathological mental deterioration. He had lost everything worthwhile in life and was only living, one might say, to drink. He frankly admitted and believed that for him there was no hope. Following the elimination of alcohol, there was found to be no permanent brain injury. He accepted the plan outlined in this book. 1 year later, he called to see me, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but there all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-confidence and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time passed with no return to alcoholism.
Absolutely. I think we're talking about Hank Parkhurst here, and it's the change that happens to a person over a given period of time. They come in, they seem completely doomed. They have this experience, they have a psychic change. They accept the tenets of this book, which is the plan that is outlined in this book. That is the solution that we prescribe, and so that is something that has to be accepted wholly. And having done that, and then over a period of time, obviously the effects of alcohol, both physically and mentally, start to subside and go away. And this new, brighter, fresher person emerges, and there you go. There's this not able to recognize the difference between the old and the new. The some of it is recognizable, and some of it isn't. The idea here is that there is something very much to look forward to, and that is that that mental and physical repair and mending that happens, and ultimately you get better and better and better, and that's what you're after.
Yeah, and Hank Parkhurst, if you've never heard of him, is an incredible character. Uh, if it wasn't for him, he pushed Bill to write the Big Book. You know, Hank made it possible trying to raise funds, etc., so Bill could spend all his time writing the Big Book, while Hank went out trying to raise money to keep him going. Uh, Hank also wrote a story that was in the first edition called The Unbeliever. In that book, he says that he was in treatment 10 times, 10 times in and out of hospital. He also wrote to the employers, where he was the boss of 6,600 men, and he relates three stories of people, of families calling him that the alcoholic had died. You know, so he is an interesting character, to be honest. He did not stay sober, so therefore he was pretty much written out of the Big Book and the history. If if he had stayed sober, he would have been a co-founder. No questions about that. And
Right.
you know, incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, let's continue. Sorry. When I need a mental uplift, I often think of another case brought in by a physician prominent in New York. The patient had made his own diagnosis and, deciding his situation hopeless, had hidden in a deserted barn, determined to die. He was rescued by a searching party and, in desperate condition, brought to me. Following his physical rehabilitation, he had a talk with me in which he frankly stated he thought the treatment a waste of effort, unless I could assure him, which no one ever had, that in the future he would have the willpower to resist the impulse to drink. His alcohol problem was so complex and his depression so great that we felt his only hope would be through what we then called moral psychology, and we doubted if even that would have any effect. However, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He has not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then, and he is as fine a specimen of manhood as one could wish to meet. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through, through. And though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth, M.D.
Yeah. So here we're talking about Fitzmayo, is the person that he is thinking of here, of another case that was brought to him by a physician prominent in New York. The found himself to be in a desperate condition and hopeless. He wasn't sure of himself, was afraid that he could never stop, and obviously Fitzmayo became AA number three, and his story is on page 208 of this book, and the um, he was able to find recovery. Bottom line is that the he accepted the ideas that contained in this book, which are the 12 steps and the program that we prescribe, and has not had a drink for a great many years. Obviously, stayed sober afterwards, and is now a contributing member of society. Last thing that we would say here is that William D. Silkworth is encouraging people to obviously read this book. This is a great entry paragraph. I'm sorry, chapter to get people started on this book, and there we are. Rob?
Yeah. Now you'll notice that they have Dr. Silkworth's name written at the bottom. Originally, when the book was published, there was no doctor's name included. His name was added after he had passed away. So, there's different reasons people give for that. One reason is that Alcoholics Anonymous didn't want to seem to be promoting Towns Hospital and Dr. Silkworth. And the other is that Dr. Silkworth didn't want to have his name included because of his revolutionary ideas. He didn't want to be scorned by the rest of the medical profession. Not sure really what the correct answer is, and that's why I gave you what I have. Uh, so let's bring in Mr. Bill.
Yep,
He'll be
that
able
sounds
to
good.
straighten everything out.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill from New Jersey. Thanks a lot, guys. Good job today. This is a really important part of the book. I don't know if they would want to call it a chapter. It's not really listed as a chapter. It's the introduction to the book, and it's really important because there's a lot of good information in here. And this is giving us the medical side of alcoholism. And where we started says, of course, the alcoholic ought to be free from his physical craving for liquor. In other words, you got to get the alcohol out of the alcoholic before you can do anything with an alcoholic. When an alcoholic has alcohol in them, we're not paying attention to anything except where the next drink is. So we have to get that fog out of our brain. We need a hospital procedure. We have to, in order to be able to understand what this book is talking about. Some people don't need to go to a hospital. They just need to sleep it off. It depends on how much somebody was drinking and what they did. And you'll hear a lot of people a lot of times talking about, they'll tell people that's taking medication, they're not supposed to take their medication. It depends on, they don't know what they're talking about it. If you're taking medication from a doctor to clear your brain up, you need to keep taking your medication, because if you don't take it, these steps may not work for you. If you've got some kind of ADHD and you can't focus on things and you're taking medication to help you focus on something, you have to keep taking your medication. Don't listen to people that tell you not to take it, because it's the same thing as being fogged up from alcohol if you have some chemical imbalance in your brain and the medication is straightening it out. So don't let anybody tell you not to take your medication except your doctor. That's the only one that can tell you what to take and what not to take. And then this book talks about, and I would call this the meat and potatoes of what this doctor is talking about. Right on the first new paragraph on XXVIII. And he's talking here about the action of alcohol on these chronic alcoholics. What happens when we take a drink of alcohol? We develop the phenomenon of cravings. And he calls it an allergy. And like Rob pointed out, that may not be the best term for it. That's the only term that they could come up with at the time when the doctor was coming up with this idea. And it's amazing. He was not an alcoholic, but he understood what was going on with alcoholics. And basically what the phenomenon of cravings is, you take a drink and you have to have more. You lose control of the amount you drink. And this only happens to alcoholics. It doesn't happen to people that are not alcoholic. I thought it happened to everybody. I knew it happened to me. Once I took a drink, I wanted more. I knew that way before I came into AA, but I thought it happened to everybody, and everybody else just had more willpower than me. I didn't realize that was a indication that I was an alcoholic. And he says, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form. That means you can't drink beer, you can't drink wine, don't even eat that vodka sauce stuff. Anything that has any kind of alcohol in it, we need to stay away from. If you're using mouthwash, use the non-alcoholic mouthwash, because mouthwash has alcohol in it, and I don't know how much you need to put in your mouth before it's going to set you off and make you want to drink more. So the best thing we can do is stay away from alcohol completely. And he talks on the bottom of that page, he talks about being restless, irritable, and discontented. This could be the second part of alcoholism, the mental part. He doesn't really go into it that much, but he's talking about something happens inside of us. Our brain makes us feel restless, irritable, and discontented, because our brain knows if we don't feel comfortable in our own skin, we'll pick up a drink to feel comfortable, and then the brain gets its candy because your brain is addicted to alcohol. And once we put that drink in us, we activate the phenomenon of cravings, and then we're off to the races again. And that's basically the points that he's trying to get across there. He's really harping on the physical part, that phenomenon of cravings. And on page XXX, down towards the bottom of the page, it says, all these and many others have one symptom in common. This is the medical expert on alcoholism. And the medical expert on alcoholism says we have one symptom. That's all you need to have to be an alcoholic. I know there's people that say there's 2 symptoms. There's people that say there's 3 symptoms. I can't find that in my book anywhere. Nowhere in this book does it say there's 2 symptoms of alcoholism or there's 3 symptoms of alcoholism. And you'll hear people in meetings arguing back and forth. This is the only place it gives us a number. This doctor says there's 1 symptom that every alcoholic has in common. Whether you have more symptoms or not, it doesn't matter. All you have to have is that 1 symptom. You take a drink and you develop the phenomenon of cravings. You take a drink and you want more. According to Dr. Silkworth, you're an alcoholic. You don't have to have the physical, the mental part. You don't have to have a spiritual part. All of that stuff can come later. All you have to have is the physical part of alcoholism, and and you're an alcoholic. And what's really, great about what this doctor came up with is before this, most people thought we were moral degenerates, ne'er-do-wells, scoundrels, troublemakers, good-for-nothings. And this doctor said, no, these people have an actual illness or a disease. There's a physical part to this. When they take a drink, they can't stop. It's got nothing to do with their willpower, nothing to do with their common sense or their choice. Once they take a drink, they're out of control. So this doctor is giving us an idea of exactly what's wrong with us. Because again, before this, they thought we were just troublemakers, ne'er-do-wells, people trying to escape from reality. Some of us may be doing that kind of stuff, but the point he's trying to get across, there is an actual physical part to alcoholism. Once we take a drink, something happens in our body chemistry that doesn't happen to people that are not alcoholics. So we're not getting drunk because we want to get drunk. We're getting drunk because we have to get drunk, because we can't stop. It's beyond our mental control. We can't will that stuff away. Willpower doesn't work for a physical reaction that's taking place inside of your body. If you think willpower works, you try willpower the next time you're cutting up a bag of onions. Use your willpower not to have your eyes water. Willpower just doesn't work for a chemical reaction that's taking place inside of your body. And he gets into some really good stuff here. Like they mentioned, he talks about Hank Parkhurst and Fitz Mayo. Both of these guys were in the Towns Hospital, and he was treating both of these guys. And Bill found these 2 guys in the Towns Hospital, and he helped them get sober by explaining what Bill did so that he didn't have to drink anymore. And these 2 guys became members of AA. And unfortunately, Hank Parkhurst went out and drank later on. But like Rob mentioned, Hank was one of the fundamental people in getting this book, published and printed and raising the funds to do it. And Fitz Mayo was another guy that was involved in the beginning of AA. All of these people were pioneers of AA, and they all came out of the Towns Hospital. So Dr. Silkworth is the guy that helped all of these people, in the beginning. So if it wasn't for Dr. Silkworth, I don't think any of us would be here. So thank God for this doctor. That's basically all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Okay, we'll close out with the serenity prayer, Rob.
Okay, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.